Tantor Audio, a division of Recorded Books, presents Dirty and Dangerous by Shayla Black. Narrated by Christian Fox.
Chapter 1. Now that we're out in the middle of nowhere, crouched outside a house I've never seen, you want to tell me why you dragged my ass here? Detective Cameron Martinez glared over his right shoulder through the inky mountain darkness at bounty hunter R.A. Thorn. Julio Marco's trial starts next week. No one can find the star witness. Tell me something I don't know. Cam clenched his fists, hard-pressed to keep his voice to a furious whisper. Without Curtis Lawton, the DA doesn't have much of a case. Julio Marco will go free and my ass will be in a sling. Yeah? I'm Lawton's bail bondsman, and he's not checking in like he promised. If he fails to appear, I'm out something close to 50 grand. That's not chump change. True, but at least Thorn wouldn't have to explain to the victims smuggled from Mexico and sold into slavery why Julio Marco, the man responsible for their torment, wasn't going to prison for a very long time as promised. Or why Curtis Lawton, the man who helped Marco, was nowhere to be found. That would fall on Cam's shoulders. It wasn't my idea to give the asshole the option of bailing out. Judge Nelson needs to have his head examined, and I advised you against posting Lawton's bond, if you recall. Thorn shrugged. I knew he was a flight risk. I had no doubt he'd do whatever necessary to avoid prison time and those unsavory pals of his who know he's turned snitch. But I've hunted him before. That's why we're here. I found him in this cozy little bungalow last year, boffing out his girlfriend's brains. This her place? Thorn shook his head, the long ends of his golden hair brushing his wide, solid shoulders. His. He moves girlfriends in to fuck them, and out once they're history. I did a drive-by earlier today. He's got a new hottie shacked up here. Pretty young thing. Little, long brown hair. World-class ass. Lawton has crappy taste in occupations, but good taste in women. Who cared what she looked like? Can you please keep your dick out of a conversation for once? Thorn's icy eyes mocked him through the darkness. Sure, Saint Can. As soon as the little woman makes her appearance, let's see if you can keep your dick out of the conversation. I'm telling you, she's fucking gorgeous. Right now, Cam cared about the fact that come next Monday, if Curtis Lawton didn't live up to his plea deal and testify against Julio Marco, his former boss, 2 years of Cam's work would be down the toilet. And a lot of young Mexican nationals who endured utter hell on earth after being guaranteed a golden ticket to the promised land would be left without justice. It figured that Thorn couldn't get his mind off of sex for more than 10 minutes strung together. Why should anything be different today? Whatever. Cam felt free to roll his eyes in the dark. What's the plan? We wait. As smoking as this woman is, good old Curtis won't stay away long. I sure as hell wouldn't. That went without saying. Thorn constantly thought with his penis. But he also never thought about the same woman more than a handful of times. Good thing for him he was a good-looking SOB who could melt a woman's panties on looks alone. Thorn was long on bad boy temper and short on sensitivity and charm. I don't care if she's Miss America, Cam returned. She's being kept by a scumbag and making her living on her back by servicing a criminal. The idea of taking Lawton's sloppy seconds doesn't get me hot. You're too picky. It's a miracle you ever get laid. It's a miracle you get laid, Cam countered. It's so impersonal for you. It's like a drive-through window, man. Would you like just the screwing, or do you want the combo package? That comes with a nipple squeeze and a tongue fuck. No one's had the need to ask me to supersize in order to get off. Thorn bristled. I haven't heard complaints. You don't stay around long enough to know if there are any. I know you're never going to tell me your full name, but do you make every woman you nail call you by your last name? Or is it all like your legal documents, Mr. R.A. Thorn? Fuck you. They don't need to know my full name to get off, and I'm not there for a relationship. It's just sex. He scowled. Are we here to catch Lawton or hash out my personal life? Cam shook his head. As much as it pained him to admit it, Thorn was right. The man's fast food sex life was none of his business. It certainly wasn't what he would have chosen, and he had suspicions that the big blonde hulk was achingly lonely, but would never admit it. And Cam couldn't make him. Let's catch Lawton. Do we know anything about his girlfriend? Other than her fine ass or the fact she has the kind of tits that make a grown man beg, no. Figured Thorn didn't get a name. Half the time he didn't bother when he took a woman to bed. Why learn the name of one he hadn't even touched? Before Cam could answer, the ground lights flipped on at the back of the bungalow, casting a muted golden glow over the trail to the pool. Then a willowy woman emerged, wearing a thin white robe belted around her small waist. She held a towel in one hand, a glass of wine in the other. Shutting the door behind her, she sashayed down the trail to the pool, closer to their hiding spot in the dusty bushes. After setting her towel on the chaise and her wine on a nearby table, the woman checked to make sure her hair was still secured on top of her head by some clip Cam couldn't see. Satisfied, she gazed up at the vast black desert sky and its many blinking stars, the majestic view unfettered by the city's lights. She smiled faintly, then dropped her robe. She was completely naked. Cam sucked in a breath. "Holy shit," Thorn muttered beside him, his voice suddenly sounding as if he'd been eating gravel. "I was hard just wondering what she had on under that thing, but now—" He had been too, Cam admitted silently. But seeing the real thing, her endless ivory skin, pert handfuls of breasts with wide nipples, the graceful curve of her hips. Holy shit seemed like an understatement. Despite the fact she was willingly sleeping with one of the worst dregs of society, Cam still felt a pull to her he could barely process. For once, he and Thorn agreed on something. "Shh," he said instead. No need to admit that he wanted her too. If she was the kind of woman who'd let a creep like Lawton pay her bills in exchange for sex, she was the kind of woman who would fall for Thorn's casual sex line. In other words, easy. Cam knew he'd still be trying to learn her name and something about her by the time Thorn was zipping up his pants and saying goodbye. Thankfully, Thorn didn't make more conversation. His gaze appeared permanently glued to the woman's nipples, hard from a light teasing by the cool evening breeze, which was finally tolerable now that October was only days away. Without hesitation, she swayed toward the pool and stepped into the water with a long, low sigh. The ache in Cam's groin tightened at the sound. Did she make little sounds like that when she was aroused? Beside him, Thorn growled. "Shh," he reminded him with a glare. Thorn totally ignored him. The beauty submerged until only her head remained above the surface. She kicked from one end of the pool to the other, moving with a slow grace, unhurried, as if she had all the time in the world to devote to this pleasure. Or any other. Unfortunately, Cam was all too aware that he didn't have all the time in the world. The trial started in mere days. "As enjoyable as this is," he whispered to Thorn, "how is watching Miss America here get naked going to help us find Lawton? Like I said, you don't think he'll stay away from her for long, do you?" No, good point. In fact, he was no more than 20 feet away from her, and pissed off that bushes and dark water obscured his view of her amazing body. He could only imagine how a man who'd touched every contour and sampled every inch would miss those graceful, supple curves. With a long sigh, she swam to the edge of the pool and ascended the stairs, hips and sweet ass swinging as she made her way up, until she was completely exposed to the night air. With quick efficiency, she patted herself down with a towel. Cam had never been so envious of terry cloth. Then she tossed back the rest of her wine in one quick swallow and lay on the chaise, face raised to the silvery moon. Gorgeous. Like a goddess. All toned limbs and soft skin, with a graceful curve to her neck, an intriguing tilt of her head. She looked untouched, untouchable, until she planted her feet on either side of the chaise, parting the firm length of her thighs, and smoothed a palm down her soft abdomen and right between her legs. "Fuck," Thorn snarled under his breath. Cam clenched his jaw. Again, he had to agree, especially when she made lazy circles with her fingers over her mound. Under her touch, her hips moved slowly, restlessly. Her head fell back, exposing the column of her white throat. Her pouty mouth parted, and her breath caught on a gasp. She moaned. "Fuck." "Shh," Cam reminded Thorn again, though he noticed his own tone was definitely more than raspy. Funny how a raging hard-on could change a man's voice. Thorn clenched his jaw, looking ready to charge through the bushes, rip off his pants, and fuck her blind. That wasn't Cam's usual style, but the idea now held major appeal, especially when she moaned again and plunged her fingers into her pussy. Wishing he could see her better was quickly becoming an obsession. He wanted her so bad he hurt. How wet was she? Did she shave or wax? Was she swollen? Did her fingers fill her hungry sex? How tightly would her pussy grip his cock? Bet the carpet matches the drapes, Thorn whispered. Cam didn't usually care about such things. It was the person inside who mattered to him. But in this case, something about the woman made all the rules different. And he suspected Thorn was right. There didn't seem to be anything artificial about her, from the unaffected sensual sway of her hips to the natural weight of her firm breasts, now rising and falling more rapidly. A sharp, sudden catch of her breath split the tense night air. Cam swallowed a groan and feared his cock would bust out of his jeans when she spread her knees wider and again raised her hips to her invading fingers. "Fuck," Thorn whispered harshly, adjusting his erection in his pants. The bounty hunter's frustration might be funny if Cameron wasn't in the same situation. Damn. A few minutes of watching her touch herself and already his balls felt tight, like he could shoot off at any moment. He wasn't some damn randy teenager, but watching her made him feel like one. Her breaths got shorter, harsher. She worked herself furiously until Cam was breathing hard, felt himself sweating despite the 60-degree evening. "That's it, baby," Thorn coached in a whisper. "Fuck yourself. Deeper. Oh, yeah, God, she looks sexy. I'm so damn hard I could pound nails. Just don't ask her if she needs any help." The woman raised one hand to a hard nipple stabbing its way into the cool desert air, and pinched it. She gave another long, low moan that had Cam biting his lip. "Wouldn't dream of interrupting," Thorn murmured. "Hell of a floor show. Let her get nice and wet and pliant. Then I'll offer to soothe her with my tongue." "TMI," he muttered. But the conversation ended when she shoved her fingers even harder into her pussy, grabbed her nipple in a hard pinch, then gyrated, moaning in a series of whimpers. She looked poised on the edge, ready to explode at any moment. Cam held his breath, grasping the edge of sanity, as he watched her fast movements grow frantic, almost panicked. She let loose a frustrated wail. Even at this distance, he could see her trembling thighs, her body so taut that every muscle vibrated with need. But she didn't come. "Can't she get off?" Thorn asked. The beauty answered that question with a jerk back of her head, a pounding of her fists on rigid thighs, and a discouraged cry that echoed through the little courtyard. Moments later, the cry became a sob as she gathered her knees to her chest and lowered her face until all he could see was the thick coil of her caramel-colored hair and her shoulders shaking with the force of her tears. Her aroused mewling had reached out and gripped his cock with need and impatience. This, her sobs, they clawed at his gut, tore at his heart. A hand on his shoulder startled him. He turned to Thorn in question. "Sit back down, Dr. Phil, or she'll see you. You can't go barging over there to dry her tears. You'll blow her cover to hell." Cam nodded, taking a deep breath. He'd been so far gone with the desire to hold her and to help her, he'd nearly given their presence away. Not good. At all. But he couldn't deny that some part of him ached to kiss the lushness of her mouth that darkness only hinted at, replace her fingers with his, then watch her come apart in his arms. He'd keep her tight against him if the need for tears came again. The urge was utterly stupid. Exhaling raggedly, Cam clenched shaking hands into fists. She was a criminal's mistress. Whatever her issue was, it was none of his. "Sorry," he murmured. Thorn was already on another subject. "Think she needs pain to get off? I know from seeing Lawton's last honey that he can sure dish it out." Grimacing, Cam tried to avoid a mental image of this beauty begging toilet scum like Lawton to hurt her. But he couldn't discount the possibility that Thorn was right. What other explanation was there for her inability to orgasm? I don't know, but it's not why we're here. Let's focus. Hard to focus when all the blood in my body has gone south of my belt buckle. Thorn grimaced. Cam rolled his eyes. Manage. Quick. We need a plan. I hate to tip my hand too early by dropping in to question her. But we're running out of time. Yeah. Cam couldn't ignore that reality. Lawton's girlfriend sniffled and lifted her face to the desert night. Silvery tears marred the smooth apples of her cheeks. He couldn't see her eyes in the dark, but the sadness that bounced off her, the despair that ate at her, he could feel it, thick and dark. Dejection pulled at her shoulders as she rose slowly, taking the towel in one hand, empty glass of wine in the other. Even a view of her heart-stopping ass couldn't cut through Cam's urgent need to hold her, help her. Something was completely wrong, and he was dying to know what. But she disappeared into the house, without giving him a single clue. At his side, Thorn released a long, hard breath. Cam wondered how long he'd been holding it. That girl needs to get off, bad. I volunteer to help, even if it takes all night. Thorn's sly grin grated on his nerves. Shut up, you moron. She doesn't just need to come. Whatever is bothering her is deeper than an orgasm will solve. Not my problem. Fuck them and forget them, huh? Nice motto. Sarcasm grated his voice. Thorn gritted his teeth. I can't stand you pussies who are in touch with your emotions. I can't stand you assholes who can't think past your cock. Silence descended, a full 5 minutes of it. In that time, crickets chirped and frogs croaked, while the desert wind kicked dust up into the bushes providing their cover. Lawton's girlfriend turned out the lights at the back of the bungalow, and Cam felt guilty. He and Thorn had been acquaintances for a long time. Not great friends. Thorn never let anyone very close, but still, sort of friends. Squabbling over the man's sex life was stupid. Neither one of them would likely ever have sex with Lawton's girlfriend, much less get to help her with her orgasm deficit, more's the pity. Before he could open his mouth, Thorn interrupted him. Fuck this, dude. Let's get back to the case. I want to keep my 50 thou, and you need your witness for court. He hesitated, looked away. You're one of the few friends I've got. I don't want some chick getting in the way of that. Cam turned to Thorn, and he knew shock was all over his face. That's the nicest thing you've ever said to me. His stare turned glacial. Don't try to interpret my emotions, pussy. That was like asking Cam not to breathe. He probably knew them better than Thorn himself did. Then again, Cam had 4 sisters. If he hadn't learned to think emotionally, he would never have survived to adulthood. Whatever, asshole, he said. I think we wait 24 hours. See if Lawton shows up. If not, I'll pull out my badge and pay his pretty little mistress a visit. Brenna Sheridan saw nothing but red. Rearing back, she eyed the big punching bag dangling from the ceiling, the tight grip of the boxing gloves around her wrists a familiar bite. She swung, putting every bit of her fury and frustration into the punch. Her fist connected with a satisfying thud, and the red bag dipped and swung. The impact of the blow shot fire up her arm. With clenched teeth, she grunted, but Brenna refused to feel pain. She'd been at this for an hour, and she wasn't done. Leaning back on her right leg, she kicked her left out to the bag, connecting with a vicious jolt that sent a punishing thud echoing through the room and a thrill of satisfaction zinging through her. Sweat poured down her temples, between her breasts, down her back, dampening her white tank and black spandex shorts. Tendrils of hair floated near her face, having escaped the haphazard clip she'd shoved them into. With a toss of her head, they disappeared, leaving her free to step forward and punch out with another hard jab at the offending bag. She pretended instead it was Curtis Lawton's head. Rude, insensitive, downright stupid. Then again, he'd been that way for years. She shouldn't be at all surprised. He'd come around, but in his time, his way. He always did. Brenna danced around the bag, balancing on the balls of her feet, before she lashed out with a fierce right kick. Because of him, she didn't trust men, didn't know how to really be herself when she was with them. She'd let him get in her head and mess with her mind. Stupid. And last night, damn, by the pool with the stars twinkling, a glass of wine relaxing her body, she'd still been unable to come. And the source of her problems? Gone. Would a phone call hurt the man? He'd kept her at arm's length in Texas forever. He'd occasionally sent birthday gifts and actually called last Christmas. Nothing else. So she'd come to him, here in Arizona. She'd been here all of 15 minutes, and what did he do? Disappear. Bastard. This morning, the reason for his behavior had become crystal clear. She'd read the morning paper, and dear Curtis's name was plastered all over the front pages with lurid headlines. Local man to turn evidence in slavery ring. Brenna had read on in shock. What the hell had he gotten himself into? According to the article, he had helped smuggle young Mexican men and women into the U.S., then forced them to work for a pittance in everything from sweatshops to underground bordellos. The whole thing turned her stomach. After ensconcing her in this pretty little house in the middle of nowhere, he'd vanished. So it wasn't like she could ask him any questions. He'd merely given her some warnings that made no sense. Go nowhere, trust no one, say nothing. Then he'd gone. Breathing hard, Brenna jerked her arm back and thrust it forward again, landing another solid strike directly on the heavy red bag. Her shoulder ached, and her body trembled from the exertion, but it felt good. Even if it didn't do much to calm her mind. What in the hell was she going to do about Curtis? A loud, impatient pounding on the little bungalow's front door snapped Brenna's head around. She hesitated, her breathing harsh. If Curtis had returned, he would have just barged in. That meant a stranger knew she was here. Out in the remote mountains of this austere desert, it wasn't as if she had any neighbors welcoming her to the area with a plate of cookies. Whoever hammered on the door with a rough fist definitely wasn't female or here for a friendly chat. Too bad for them, she was in a foul mood and had no intent to let anyone screw with her. Drawing off her boxing gloves as more impatient raps on the door resounded through the place, Brenna darted down the hall and searched the French provincial nightstand in the sumptuous bedroom until she found what she was looking for. Ah, a Beretta. Lovely semi-automatic favored by military and law enforcement. Curtis did love his guns. This ought to deter her uninvited guest. With a smile and the gun clenched tightly in her fist, Brenna sauntered to the front door. Chapter 2. Brenna yanked the door open, the Beretta firmly gripped in one hand. Bad attitude, as only a Texas girl raised with macho alpha male cousins can conjure, was stamped all over her face. She wasn't sure what she expected. Leather-wearing goons with jagged scars on their faces, maybe? Nothing, though, could have prepared her for the man who stood under the dim porch light, badge in hand. Tall. So striking she couldn't breathe for fully 30 seconds. Wow, 6'2", 6'3". He towered way, way above her. Hair a silky, unrelieved black that looked as if it had been cut short once, months ago, then left to hang loose to brush his collar and tangle across his wide forehead. Bronzed skin covered the landscape of an angular face, complete with a sharp jaw, a sensually sculpted mouth, and killer cheekbones bequeathed to him by some Apache ancestor. Eyes a swirl of mysterious colors, like whiskey with chocolate made smoky by a hint of sin lurking just under his calm facade. Dear Lord, had she ever seen a more gorgeous man? Shoulders nearly as wide as the doorframe stretched a tight gray t-shirt to the brim with muscles that bulged and rippled, despite the fact he did nothing more than breathe. Without conscious thought, her gaze strayed lower, over ridged abdominal muscles that even clothing couldn't conceal, and lower, to an impressive bulge nestled in clinging jeans that had faded in the most intriguing places. Forcing her gaze down again, she took in scuffed black western boots. This guy gave the motto "Ride 'em cowboy" a whole new meaning. He cleared his throat. "Ma'am, I'm Detective Cameron Martinez of the Tucson Police Department." Detective, not just a beat cop. With what Curtis was into, it was a miracle they hadn't sent Border Patrol, INS, the FBI, and a slew of other government agencies. But no, just the one absolutely amazing, beyond drool-worthy hunk. "Would you mind putting the gun down?" he asked, his voice soft and forceful at once. Oh, Lord, she'd been so busy gawking at the man that she'd forgotten she was pointing a weapon at him. With an awkward smile, Brenna reached around and placed the Beretta on the small table against the wall on her left, but still within reach. "Out here all alone. A girl can't be too careful. How can I help you, Detective?" Brenna tried to play it cool. Tried like crazy. Hard to seem calm with a trembling voice, damn it. He was going to ask her questions. And she wasn't a good liar. If she screwed this up, what the hell would happen to Curtis? Of course, if he did half of what he was accused of doing, he deserved to do hard time. But she needed his help before someone sent him behind bars. After last night, she knew she needed help real bad. Besides, Curtis had told her not to trust anybody, even the police. For all she knew, Detective Martinez was a dirty cop. Her unexpected visitor simply sent her a questioning glance, then changed the subject. "Can I come in and ask you a few questions?" "Am I in trouble?" She was stalling. Damn it, a story, some story, a believable one to throw him off track. She needed one now. No one would believe what Curtis told her to say. "Not at all," he soothed. As you can see, I'm in no shape for visitors." She looked down at her own sweaty garments and grimaced. "Maybe later?" Great first impression. Pointing a gun at the man while looking and smelling her worst. Now she had to choose between putting him off or lying about a criminal. She doubted there'd be any first dates in their future. "It won't take long, ma'am. Or I don't mind waiting if you want to clean up first." And let him look around Curtis's little hideaway while she showered? Not a good idea. "Well, if it won't take long, now is fine." She stepped back to admit him. Now what? Brenna blew out a deep breath, her mind racing. Calm. Yes, she had to stay calm. Or Mr. Tall, Dark, and Unsettling would pick her apart in 20 words or less. She led him to the small living room at the front of the house and perched on the edge of a chair. He chose the sofa across the room and stared at her with those unusual swirling eyes, giving away nothing of his thoughts. Intense, quiet, perfect descriptions of him. "Gotta watch out for the quiet ones," Aunt Jean had always said. Looking at the detective, Brenna suddenly understood why, and couldn't have agreed more. "Can I get you something to drink?" She stalled again. "No, ma'am." "Brenna, please. When you say ma'am, I start looking for my aunt." The corner of his mouth tipped up. And what a mouth. She had been so mesmerized by his eyes earlier, she'd barely acknowledged the wide mouth that looked oh so capable of sin. "Brenna." His deep, smooth voice gave her shivers. How would his whisper sound in her ear as he was thrusting deep inside her? No. He was here to ask questions, not seduce her. She should be coming up with a believable story, not fantasizing. "Last name?" he asked. "Sheridan." "You live here?" "I'd planned to visit, stay a while, but I'm from Texas originally." That smile on his lips crept up a little farther. His eyes warmed. "I gathered that from your sweet southern accent." Brenna tried not to blush under the weight of his gaze. Impossible. His stare centered on her, not exactly sexual, but not purely professional either, especially when his gaze dipped for just a moment from her face to her breasts. Shit. She was wearing a thin white tank top, damp with sweat, and no bra. Knowing those enigmatic eyes of his were trained on her breasts, hardened her nipples. Brenna didn't have to look down to know that they stabbed the front of her shirt, impossible to miss, and that he was getting an eyeful. From the subtle appreciation in his gaze, he liked what he saw. But to confirm, she lowered her lashes and looked at the front of his jeans. Holy cow. Up straight, beyond hard. And his size. He'd crossed the line from impressive to imposing. So the good detective realized she was female. That gave her an idea. "Southern accent?" She batted her lashes at him. "I don't hear it. Everyone I know sounds like me." He laughed. discreetly drawing his gaze back to her face. But his stare remained heavy, as if she was...
Sample complete. Ready to continue?